It is now time to break down the New Japan Pro Wrestling Destruction in Kobe show that happened on September 29, 2024, of course, in Kobe, Japan, at the Kobe World Hall. Now, was it a big deal, Warren? Did the masses turn out for this? Well, 4,528 people showed up in Kobe Hall to watch the show. Is that good, Warren? Well, if we are to compare from the last time that New Japan was in the building, which was last year for another Destruction in Kobe show, they put in 4,000, that would have been a tremendous uptick, 4,212 people. The main event here this year was Great Okan versus Tetsuya Naito. Last year was Will Ospreay versus Yota Tsuji in an absolute top-notch barn burner, an absolutely extraordinary match. Other than that, there was a Tetsuya Naito versus Jeff Cobb as the co-main event, whereas this year it was Dave Finlay versus Yoshihashi, of course. And I mean, it's good, right? I think the last time, more than in fact, not more than I think, in fact, we'll get to it. The last time that New Japan was in the building that drew over 5,000 people, because this is an 8,000 seat capacity venue, right? It's one of these multi-purpose venues. It's not specifically an arena or whatnot. So you can seat about 8,000 people in there. They did 6,454 all the way back in 2018 for another Destruction in Kobe show. This time main evented by Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kazuchika Okada, arguably one of the last great ones that the two had, and a tremendous match with Kushida versus Bushi. I think that was around the time where the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title was vacant. So those were the two matches that wrapped up the card on that date. So this is a good number for New Japan. Again, it's been doing, and there's a slight progression over last year. It's 500 in attendance difference, right? It's 500 tickets more this year. So we're in the same venue, we're in the same boat. But it's interesting because if you take a look at Dragon Gate, who from what I can tell is the only other promotion that has run Kobe World Hall this year. Their festival, the Pro Wrestling Festival, drew 4,795 people this year for an event that they held in July, right? And New Japan here, they had 4,528. So again, we're in the same vicinity. It's nothing, we're in the same vicinity for 200, a difference of 200 isn't notable. But if we go back to last year, Dragon Gate did 5,150 people for the Pro Wrestling Festival. And they've always scored high in Kobe Hall because, Kobe's their stomping grounds, right? So one would assume that they would be able to draw easier, bigger houses. But this year, they're pretty much on the same footing as New Japan. I thought that to be interesting because that's more of a remarkable, a noticeable, maybe not remarkable, but a noticeable drop for Dragon Gate as opposed to last year, whereas New Japan did a slight did a slight improvement. It was just a little bit higher. Like I said, Kobe is that's where Dragon Gate is headquartered. It's their place. It's their thing. That's where they operate out of. So it's to be expected that they draw bigger crowds. It's interesting that they're very close on par with New Japan this year. And again, like, it's not a bad attendance. Often you'll hear talk about how, attendance for Japanese promotions, but let's stick with New Japan here. Attendance for New Japan shows still haven't reached, pre-pandemic eras as things used to be, essentially. This is a good example here. This is a good example. If we go all the way back to 2018, where they draw over 6,000 people in the building, we're still quite a ways away. And you had some big people in the main event. Are we still lacking the stars? Are we still lacking the dynamics that make New Japan interesting, and then that people will want to pile up on top of each other to come see a show like it was once in the past? Maybe. We hear it all the time. The company's in a reconstruction phase. We're out of COVID and so on and so forth. And it is going to take some time. There are decisions being made, some that were made on this show to try and reinvigorate reinvigorate the roster, the lineup. That's something that they have a little more control over. If you're able to build your stars, especially new ones that audiences will get attached to, well, that's what you should be focusing on. Hopefully, this will continue down that trend, a trend that sort of kind of started with the G1, with Zack Sabre Jr. winning the G1. That's not that Zack Sabre Jr. is a young man by any stretch of the imagination, but if anything, he's fresh for the main event picture, and that's what New Japan needs. It needs the freshness. It needs new ideas, new people, just new stuff to put forward to try and get more people in the building, because the old guard is either gone or is slowly going away. But yeah, that's a discussion, of course, that we've had on previous occasions. I had it throughout my G1 daily coverage this year. Now we're going to talk about the Kobe show, Destruction in Kobe, that happened this weekend. I thought this was a good show, a very good show on top of that. I have minimal quibbles with this show. I was thoroughly entertained, thoroughly entertained. I thought that I thought that the matches that would be a little iffy ended up over delivering. I see, at least we're talking about for the business side of the card, right? When we're talking like the top 4 matches or so, those are the ones that really do interest you. You don't get hype for one of these shows because of the opening 6-man that has Tomoaki Hanma wrestling in it, right? You get hype for what's coming up down the card, and it did a fantastic job. The top of the card did a fantastic job at just delivering the goods, providing a real entertaining, dramatic series of matches. I was super into it. I thought this was a very, very good show. We got some surprises throughout as well. I mean, there's things that have been set up for the immediate future for the King of Pro Wrestling show. There's a lot to love here. I don't have a problem with it. Let's just get to it. Let's start talking about it. We'll start by start by the main event and work our way down. I don't think you're chomping at the bit to hear me give my impressions on LIJ versus United Empire. We'll go with the main event, where Tetsuya Naito successfully retained the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship by defeating the Great Okan. I thought this was a very, very good match. I was surprised at how much I liked it. And I know these guys had a pretty good match during the G1. I thought this one was better. But one thing was constant though. When I thought back to the G1 match and I look back to this one here, these two dudes have really good chemistry. Like there's no two ways to really try to wrap your head around it. Like they just work really, really well together. And it showed that Naito was in complete confidence with what Great-O-Khan was doing. And as I talked about on my preview, I was wondering whether or not Great-O-Khan would be in a position where he could truly guide a match for Naito, right? And set the tone, set the pace, and he did. This was a Great-O-Khan match that Tetsuya Naito wrestled. So maybe this is one of the reasons why it went so well, because it was very ground-based, a lot of submissions and locks and whatnot that were involved, and that kept Naito from having to resort to using more of his typical high-flying mobile offense, which is a little rougher to get going these days. Now, Naito had to answer with a ground game of his own, which and chain wrestling in and out of submissions. I thought this was tremendous, and he even pulled out a couple of old standards. We got to see the Puma Blanca in this one. Like this was very, very good. And the fact that Great-O-Khan was able to guide the pace here was like, okay, well, good for him, first of all, but it also helped Naito tremendously. I don't want to say that they did this to absolutely mask Tetsuya Naito's deficiencies these days, but I'll strongly imply it because I think this truly was like the best possible opponent for a one-on-one, just like Zach is going to be in a couple of weeks. I think this was the best possible opponent for Tetsuya Naito, because he doesn't have to be extremely physical. He just has to work a solid, well thought out ground game. We're not expecting him to bounce everywhere across the ring, and he can maintain. He can still wrestle, still do something very good, and can maintain like the big physical feats. Like big match Naito can come out, can be saved, and can come out at Wrestle Kingdom, considering, if that is the plan, right? Because the plan's not as clear as it has been over the past couple of years. If it is indeed the plan to have Naito wrestling in the main event at Wrestle Kingdom, well, then there is absolutely the possibility for him to, save main event Naito for that, to not go too hard, in these preliminary, not these preliminary matches, but the matches on the road to Wrestle Kingdom. I don't think these opponents are. I think these opponents are well picked. I think they've been chosen purposefully, because both are going to have solid ground games. We're not going to be expecting, high flying affairs or, massive brawls. It's groundwork, and Naito shows that he can still keep up. He can still do that. So again, I don't want to say, I'm not trying to pile on to the idea, oh, Naito's washed. Absolutely not. All I'm saying is that these are smart opponents to book him, to preserve him physically for when he will be needed to deliver, which will likely be at the Tokyo Dome in the main event. Because he can still do it, because we've seen him pull great performances out of the air, just as much as there's some matches where it's just like, my God, he's washed, we're done. We have still seen Tetsuya Naito on a few choice occasions pull out the old the old magic and just stun us all with a great wrestling match. And I think they're saving that. I think this is their way of putting him in bubble wrap, but not keeping him off the shows. Because you could be saying, well, Warren, if they want to protect him so bad, take him off the shows. But Tetsuya Naito is the only true legitimate draw that this company has. And when I say legitimate, I'm not saying that the others are not draws. What I mean by legitimate is that you can point to where there's a pattern, and you can point to and you say every time that this guy is on the is in the main event or whatever, it adds more butts in the seats. You can see that when he's not, attendance goes down, but when he's in a top position, attendance goes up. That's Tetsuya Naito. So when you're in a position, if you agree with me with my statement earlier, if you're in a position where New Japan is in a reconstruction phase and still trying to get back to pre-pandemic levels when it comes to their attendance, well, that you got to put your draw. You got to put him in the main event. You got to put the guy who actually draws the tickets and puts the butts in seats. So you can't just set him aside and put him on ice until it's time to defrost him for the main event. You cannot do that. And the one thing that is also important to keep in mind in Japanese pro wrestling as opposed to North American pro wrestling, as far as I know, the business is still strongly built around attendance, where there's actual people in the building. They don't have the benefit of these cuckoo crazy media deals like WWE and likely AEW have access to. These deals where if you're not drawing as many people in the building, where you don't really care because you've got guaranteed millions upon millions upon millions of dollars that are just going to be deposited into the checking account, and so you're going to be fine. So whether you're drawing 200 people or 20,000 people, the money's coming in anyways. Japan doesn't have that luxury. These promotions still are very much dependent on their attendance. So maybe that's why I'm harping a little harder on it than I would. I mean, I still harp hard on it when I talk about AEW because I still think, but for other reasons. It's mostly for vibes, for aesthetic reasons. As a barometer of popularity and stuff. A good consumer-facing key performance indicator, right? As opposed to, AEW is going to be, not if the deal comes through. When the deal comes through, when the deal is announced, is what I'm trying to say. We just have to come to grips that the deal is happening, folks. I harp on it with AEW because of those reasons. Because I think that empty arenas deflate your live audience. It deflates the talent as well. They're not quite as excited to perform in front of when they're in a basketball arena that is like an eighth full. They're not into that. It definitely affects the vibes for the viewing audience as well. Because if the live audience on TV doesn't come across as being super hot, then you're not going to get that vibe. And it affects production. It's just not a great feeling. You want your product to feel hot. You want it to come across as hot. Well, the best way to do that is to have a rabid, full packed arena, whether it be 8,000, 10,000, or 15,000 people, or you just want it packed, right? That's why I get hard on AEW because, there's a question of perception. In New Japan, you got to be, or in Japan, for New Japan, and in Japan in general, you have to be hard on them because, or a little more critical, a little more analytical, and you have to press on it a little more when you think about how things are structured and how you're going because attendance is still the name of the game. Your gates are still your main source of revenue. So that's why you don't put Tetsuya Naito on ice. That's why you don't say, stay at home, pal, in the meantime, on our way to Wrestle Kingdom. That's why you don't do that, because you need Tetsuya Naito, because he's your last true draw. Now, will there be other draws to come? Well, you hope to hell there will be. You hope that there's going to be someone who's going to break away from the pack, and you'll be able to observe and say, I see an uptick here. I see, better situations here. But for that, you need a pattern. You need to be able to observe things, and there's no better way to observe it than with your world champion. Usually your world champion is your top guy, is the guy that you feel confident enough that will draw money. So if Zack Sabre Jr. wins, well, there's going to be some very interesting metrics that we'll be able to check. I mean, Royal Quest in the UK, that's fine. I'm pretty sure, isn't it already sold out or close to? That's fine. He's going to be main eventing. He's going to be main eventing as IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. That's just fine. But he's going to have a Wrestle Kingdom, that's going to be a tremendous test to see how better his Wrestle Kingdom will perform as opposed to the couple of previous years. If he holds on to it afterwards, if he holds on to the title afterwards, well, we'll be able to see if the trends are up, if the year over year is better, if even the month over month is better, or the quarter or whatnot. We'll be able to observe. That's mostly how you see it. You have to try some stuff out sometimes. Of course, if the rest of the card sucks, I don't think, outside of having Jesus Christ himself being the main event, I don't think it'll draw. But yeah, look, it's still a primary statistic that we attribute to world champions and what they're able to world champions, their drawing power, that is. If you have a large enough roster and a talented enough roster to just make it feel like a good package deal, good for you. But normally your world champion is the representative. It's the face. It's the guy that's supposed to put asses in the seats to begin with. But back to the match. Well, I think I kind of said everything that I had to. I'm looking over my notes here. I think I pretty much said everything that I feel I had to say here. Naito does a hurricane, an avalanche hurricane rana. All these weather names for pro wrestling moves are just getting in the way here. And I like the finish. He tries to do the Destino proper, but he can't. Great-O-Khan gets like a swinging STO or something. He lifts up Tetsuya Naito, who reverses him into a slop drop, and then lands the Destino for the win. I thought the finish was very good. You could see, Great-O-Khan really helping out Naito, and that's fine. This is what it is now. I gave this match 3 3/4 stars. I thought it was very, very, very good, and a solid, entertaining, well-wrestled main event. That's all you really want. Well, after the match, might as well talk about it now. Zack Sabre Jr. comes out because he's staking his claim, right? Because he's going to be facing officially Tetsuya Naito. He's going to be facing Tetsuya Naito at King of Pro Wrestling, and this is also one of the reasons I think that this match lacked a little punch, lacked a little spice, because the conclusion was foregone, right? There was no way Great-O-Khan was defeating Tetsuya Naito for the title. It would have been like this most bizarre twist of fate for that to happen, right? So, everyone kind of expected King of Pro Wrestling, especially with how they announced the main event for Royal Quest before we knew who Zach was going to fight at King of Pro Wrestling. Like the fact that Zack Sabre Jr. decided that he wanted to not wait till Wrestle Kingdom and challenge for the title at King of Pro Wrestling, and then they set up Royal Quest with Zack Sabre Jr. in the main event against Sonata. Well, we were assuming it was the main event, but I mean, you know, we were all like, oh, well, Zach is winning, right? Zach is going to win a King of Pro Wrestling, and then he's going to go defend his title in the UK. Like, he's going to have like the greatest welcome home of all time. And then he'll still be able to do the Dome main event. Like that, once we saw all of those pieces in place, it didn't take much to sort of figure out what was going to happen. So you went, well, the Great-O-Khan match is just like it's a placeholder defense. It's, you know, Great-O-Khan got a win over Naito during the G1. It wasn't the only one, but hey, you know, we're not going to get into that. But so, you know, Great-O-Khan was like, well, I want a defense. Then I want to challenge, not a defense. I want to challenge for the IWGP World Heavyweight title. And, you know, then they said, okay, well, we'll do it at the show here at the Destruction in Kobe. And no one really thought that Great-O-Khan was going to be a winner here. Not with how everything was placed. Like, it would have been so out there. It would have been bold, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't have hated it. I would, like, make sure that I want to make sure that I'm well understood, that I'm not misunderstood. I wouldn't have been bothered with a Great-O-Khan victory. Like, I would have kind of been into it. It would have been very bold. Anyway, too late for that now, Warren. After the match, like we said, we have Zack Sabre Jr. He comes out in the ring sort of to stake his claim. But then Shingo Takagi shows up and he's like, well, don't forget me. And he's got his never open weight championship over his shoulder, which he just won earlier in the evening. Spoiler alert. We haven't gotten to that part of the review yet. So he's like, hey, you know, Naito, Zach, you know, I'm still around. And you want to talk about spoilers? the newly returned Ryohei Oiwa got into the ring and was like, hey, Takagi, that never title looks mighty fine. Do you think I could have a whirl at it? Do you think So that's tremendous. We'll talk about Oiwa's return to New Japan as a fully grown adult, I guess, in a second. But I got to tell you, this is very interesting. And right now, these are the two matches that are confirmed for King of Pro Wrestling on October 14, which is really, it's in 2 weeks, folks, right? It's like in a little more than 2 weeks. Whenever you're listening to this, I don't know. Maybe we are listening to this and the event is past. Maybe it's not in 2 weeks. But as we're recording this, it's in about 2 weeks. And there's two matches on the card, to Naito versus Zack Sabre Jr. and Shingo versus Oiwa, which is fantastic so far. And I mean, look, again, we'll talk about Oiwa in a second. But that's what happened after the main event. Intriguing stuff, and we've set the pace. We're ready to go, and already King of Pro Wrestling is super interesting with just two matches. It's already super interesting. Yeah, 3 3/4 stars. I think I mentioned that, right? Yes, I did. Dave Finlay versus Yoshihashi. This had a very standard start. Well, Dave Finlay defeated Yoshihashi, right? He's still global champion, IWGP global champion. And it's a very standard New Japan beginning, right? And then they start referencing, well, when I say they start, in the video package that they did before the match, which, you know, explains the entire story for everyone, right? So that everyone knows what the story is. So there's a video package before, just to make sure that you know everything, right? They make a particular point from poor Yoshihashi a few years ago coming in to save. It was Okada, right? Coming in to save Okada from Jay White and Gedo when they decided to split from Chaos. Like he just runs and he trips just as he gets to the ring and he falls like fucking face first onto the steel of the ring on the floor. You know, commentary mentioned it like he was the meme of the internet for like 5 years, but with reason, because look, he really hurt himself, but it was still funny. But he really hurt himself, but it was still funny. It's the duality of man, folks, in this type of situation where you're like, yeah, that was very painful, and it sucks that he got injured. That was terrible, but it was also hilarious. But the guy was in pain, and that's terrible, and he had to take time off of his career. Like it's a stupid bad accident, but it's also funny. You just can't escape it. You can't. You just can't. Who is a saint enough to just go, no, that is not funny? No, it is funny. Like it's on a cosmic level, at the very least, it's funny. Like the irony of it, it's funny. Like there's so many levels to that event. Anyway, we're not reviewing that, but then we're talking about that because it happened in Kobe, and people got really, not people, but commentary really put that over. They put it over in the video package, and then in the match, Finlay and Yoshihashi referenced that, with Dave Finlay wanting to ram him into there, but eventually Yoshihashi gets the upper hand and he rams Dave Finlay into the middle of the ring. So he got to eat dirt. He wasn't making fun of Yoshihashi anymore. Yoshihashi has raised above. He has risen above. They fight up the ramp. They're teasing to they're teasing to do a suplex on it, and running shotgun drop kick. Then they get back in the ring, and Yoshihashi does a Topican Hilo. David Finlay gets beat up for a while. He launches him into the post, which changes the complexity of the match, the complexion of the match, but also the complexity. You can do both. Throwing suplex by Finlay. They trade some strikes. Ripcord backbreaker and a dominator by Finlay, followed by the Irish Curse. And Yoshihashi locks in one of the moves I despise the most, like in all of pro wrestling, at least when Yoshihashi does it, the butterfly lock, which he has had in his arsenal for years. And I would actively make fun of it every time I'd see it, because it just looked like the softest hold. Like there was nothing that looked vicious about it. And seems to me, I haven't seen him lock in a proper butterfly lock like this, like he did at the Kobe show. Like that was really good. And Finlay had to struggle to get out of it. It was a really good spot that really did feel like the match could end right there, that Yoshihashi was really in control. Hell, they even had Gedo throw in the shillelagh and Finlay couldn't pull it off. Even with that, like there was nothing. Yoshihashi even twists back the arm. Like you were buying it at this point. You're like, holy shit. You're like, this could actually end here. Because he's doing the butterfly lock. Finlay's trying to reach the ropes. So what does Yoshihashi do? He uses like one of his arms to grab that arm and pull it back and twist it. And Finlay goes, this sucks. And he quickly then used his legs to break the hold. And it was a fantastic segment. You could really buy into it. And the thing here, after that, Yoshihashi keeps the pressure on, does the Komagoroshi, and then pulls out the loose explosion that Walker Stewart and Chris Charlton lost their minds over. The karma was reversed into a stun dog millionaire by Dave Finlay, which I thought that was really good. They're in and out of moves into oblivion and a pop-up powerbomb by Dave Finlay. He lands the overkill, and we get ourselves the end of the match here. David Finlay retains. Interestingly enough, Hiroki Goto after the match, sort of angling towards Dave Finlay and was eyeing that belt. So maybe this, first of all, this might be a third match right there for King of Pro Wrestling. That could be. We might even get, some kind of nice little closure for Hiroki Goto in this year of Goto, of the resurgence of Goto. Maybe this is how we top it off. Maybe not an IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, but the global title. That could be interesting. Could be a nice little way to recognize the resurgence of Goto's popularity this year. I love this match. I gave it 4 stars. I thought this was tremendous. I thought it was well done. This is one of my favorite Dave Finlay matches in a long while, and I'm gonna put a lot of that on. I'm gonna put a lot of that on Yoshihashi, because Yoshihashi always delivers in these situations. Like, he's underappreciated and undervalued, probably because of all this, because of the goofball affectations that we have for him, because of things like tripping and busting his face against the ring and stuff like that. But I'm gonna put a lot of it on Yoshihashi. But Dave Finlay, I felt, was in another mode. He, like, the Stun Dog Millionaire counter. I was not expecting that. Like, I feel like that's not something you usually see out of Finlay, and it surprised me, and it made sense, and it was good. I'm still waiting for that big second gear Dave Finlay, like that moment where he just kind of goes Super Saiyan and explodes. Because, like I talked about in the preview, and I think what they and I mean by they, Gedo, I think what he wants out of Dave Finlay is for Dave Finlay to be kind of like Jay White, a guy who is methodical and smart, and wrestles a non-work rate way that you usually expect in Japan, and be like just a dastardly heel in the meantime. The difference is that Jay White is a charisma magnet. He is one of the best heels in the world. So whatever he couldn't do because of what he was trying to project as leader of Bullet Club, as a pro wrestler, whatever, he could make up for it with his just natural heel charisma, which Dave Finlay does not have. He's not even close to being on that level, but it's also unfair, I think, to go that far, because Jay White was just spectacular. Jay White is 1 in a million when it comes to heel performances. But nonetheless, I thought both guys put in tons of effort here. Love the match. 4 stars from me. You want to talk about matches I really love too? You want to continue down that road, that path? Shingo Takagi defeated Hinare to once again become Never Openweight champion. Of course, we spoiled this already because we did the main event stuff first. I mean, this match is exactly what you think it is, and it started exactly how you think it did, and it was just tremendous. It was tremendous, and I think it's one of their better outings. I feel like the final third of this match is particularly great. And, they told an incredible story once again, this time of Shingo just being worn the hell out. This is another one where a submission move came into, not unlike with the butterfly lock and Dave Finlay with Yoshihashi, Hinare's full Nelson, I forget what he calls it. It doesn't matter. And the Ultimo. Hinare gets Shingo into one of his Ultimo and wears him down. And for a stretch, then Shingo is exhausted and, is leaning against Hinare. He can't throw any strikes with any gusto, any impact. It's looking grim for Shingo in this match, but of course, he fights back, gets a dragon suplex in. And Shingo, look, he's so exhausted. I forgot to mention this, but he's so exhausted, and I love this. It's like he gets picked up into the position for the Streets Rage, but which is Hinare's finisher, and he can't, he tumbles out of it. He just shoves his way out. He doesn't do anything fancy. He's not trying. He doesn't do a reversal. He doesn't do, he doesn't get into chaining some stuff together to transition into another move. No. He just sort of tumbles out of it. I don't know if it was intentional or not. I don't know if that was part of the thing or if it was just a wee bit of a botch, but it worked in the context where Shingo is just too exhausted to be fancy. He's absolutely I'm just surviving mode, and that was fantastic. And he fights back with a dragon suplex, and they have this incredible exchange of lariats and headbutts, and they tease doing the Sapporo finish, where Hinare grabbed both of Shingo's arms and then just cracked his skull, across Shingo's face and won the match. But Shingo gets out of that, and he lands a pair of huge pumping bombers, and then does the gnarliest Last of the Dragon, where he drops Hinare right on his head, and I'm like, oh my God, is he okay? But at this point, I'm like, when it comes to Hinare and me being afraid and going, oh my God, is he okay? The default answer should be yes. Don't worry, it's Hinare. He's always okay. His skull was busted open, and they dressed him up like he was in an old timey 1950s Looney Tunes. When they put the big headdress with the bow when cartoon characters would go to the dentist, right? Or they'd have a sore tooth. That's what he looked like. And they were like, all right, you're good to go. Go wrestle some more. And he's like, yeah, I'm good to go. So when it comes to Hinare in his head, I don't know. He seems invulnerable. I think it's fine. This rule, this is exactly the shit that I love in New Japan. This is the kind of stuff that I love in Japanese wrestling in general. Just two guys, hard hitting, just beating the shit out of each other for my enjoyment. For my enjoyment. They're doing it for me. And I think this is one of their better encounters. I still think the time limit draw was their best. But this, if you wanted to tell me this was your favorite, I'd be sure this is probably my second favorite. This is tremendous. 4.5 stars from your boy, MrWarrenHayes here. On this card, we also had Doki successfully retaining the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title against Yoshinobu Kanemaru in another great match. I'm just sitting there from this point on in the show. You're just you kick back, you make sure you have your favorite beverage, perhaps a snack. Try and keep it as healthy as possible. Watch your sodium intake, folks. And you sit back, you enjoy this, and this one kicked it off so wonderfully. Another just tremendous match. Yoshinobu Kanemaru goes after the knee, and boy does he ever go after the knee. It's just savage and brutal and meticulous and laser focused. No one does it. I dare anyone to show me who does working a limb better than Kanemaru does. Because he is so savage about it, and you buy it. He's so precise and crisp and right on the nose every single time, every attack that he does on it. And then when he's locking the knees in and he's he's doing these awful holds. You're like, this fucking works. This is so good. So when Doki is, he's not able to pull off his moves. He's, when he goes for a Northern Lights suplex but can't do the bridge because his knee has been worked over. You're like, yeah, I buy it. Of course it did. Of course he can't do it. And Kanemaru is wrapping figure fours, I think twice overall in this match, if I'm not mistaken. And it just looks like the most excruciating moments in the history of everything. And Doki is so good at selling. He's so good at putting over that he's in trouble, and yet he's overcoming. Now the unfortunate part, and Kanemaru even jams the knee off the apron right onto the floor too. He just like one of these where he picks up the knee, and he jumps off the apron and just nails it right into the floor. Like, it's good stuff. Everything looks vicious. And Show, of course, arrives because it's a House of Torture match, so there's got to be some of this goddamn nonsense. But you know what? Not so bad. Like this, they tried to get the Whiskey Mist to work, but they failed out. It didn't quite work out the way they wanted to. And that's fine. Like because that was pretty much the end of it for House of Torture interference. If you have a heel trying to cheat to win a match, overall, that's a basic precept of pro wrestling, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's when it becomes invasive, when it completely turns over the match, when the rest of the 10, 12 minutes that you've just watched becomes completely invalidated, because then the interference becomes such an integral part. The story shifts from the wrestling to that. That's where I have a problem. This was not the case. So I was pleasantly surprised. There's a ref bump here, where they try to do the nonsense, to try to do some nonsense, and nothing comes out of it. Like, it just doesn't work. So, okay. Doki lands the Daybreak DDT. He avoids another figure four. I think that's the third figure four that Kanemaru tries to lock in. Lands the Lariat and the Suplex de la Luna for the win. And I gave this 3 3/4 stars. I thought this was another fantastic match. We're cooking, as the kids say, rocking and rolling, as the older generation than I used to say. What did my generation used to say? It's good. I don't remember. I never used lingo. I was never that cool. What are we talking about? The tremendous match. I thought it was great. And after the match, Show challenges for the belt. He sort of brings it up onto the ramp and teases to crush it with his wrench, and but he ends up attacking Doki, and it's all fine. It's all fine. So that could be a fourth match being set up for King of Pro Wrestling. So you'd have, if we think of it, right, you'd have Naito versus Saber, you have Oiwa versus Shingo, you have Dave Finlay versus Hiroki Goto, and Doki versus Sho. So, that's your business end of the card, really. You could do a lot worse. That's pretty good. Nothing on the tag team side. I'm not complaining. Don't mind me. I'm not complaining. Now we're getting into the rest of the show, which was look, the Hiroshi Tanahashi, we'll just skim over it, and there's a couple of points of interest, but I'm not going to go over these matches. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Toru Yano, and Bolton Oleg defeated Evil, Sho, and Yujiro Takahashi. The Hiroshi gets the win here after ELP made a save. a freshly groomed El Fantasmo. And the big news out of this one is that he pointed to the lion mark and said, that's home. He's not screwing around with Bullet Club or whatnot. He's going to be Hantai moving forward. Nice, clean look, doesn't look disheveled. And I think he's been working out too. He's looking good. He's looking good is what I'm trying to say. So we'll see how this affiliation with Hantai works. The trio of Zack Sabre Jr., Kosei Fujita, and X, who turned out to be Ryohei Oiwa, defeated the Just Five Guys tandem of Sanada, Taichi, and Taka Michinoku. So I said I'd talk about Oiwa a little later. This is where we are. I mean, this was probably the least surprising surprise in the history of surprises. I feel like everyone, even the most casual New Japan viewer, was like, yeah, it's going to be this guy, right? It has to be this guy. It's what made the most sense. He was all done with his excursion over in Noah. We all wrapped that up with a nice little bow. And he's coming back and he's hungry and he wants to get into the mix of things. And well, there you go, and suddenly there's a new member of TMDK that's being announced. Well, it all seemed kind of coincidental. It all sort of, you're kind of like, are we sure that this is going to be, are we sure? Are we really sure? Yeah, we were sure. This was it. So, it was your run-of-the-mill trios match, New Japan style. It was fine. I don't think he necessarily shined here. I don't think he stunk either, but there was nothing where you're like, oh, this kid is back, or if you weren't familiar with him, you're like, oh, this is what everyone is talking about. Like it was a very basic return. Now, and at first I was, I had it in my notes, I was a little disappointed. I was like, really? This is all you're going to do? This is all you're going to do with Oiwa for his big return? One of the guys who is earmarked to be one of the tippy top guys in New Japan. Everyone likes this kid. I haven't met anyone who's like, Oiwa so. No, everyone is super high on him. I've seen some of his matches in Noah. He wrestled one of my favorite matches this year with Kaito Kiyomiya, the headlock match. One of my favorite matches this year. We're all sitting around saying this kid is going to be a star, and then you do this. This is how you present him. But then they're setting him up for a big, he fresh off the plane, or off the train in this case, fresh off the train. He's in there with Shingo, gonna mix it up for the Never title. I'm like, okay, you could do a hell of a lot worse. And with a sicko like Shingo, I think that's going to be Oiwa's big return match. And I'm kind of glad they're keeping it in there. They're saving it. They're going to make it happen, but they're probably, well, not probably, at King of Pro Wrestling, that's going to be an attraction. That's going to be a featured match. That's going to have a lot of buzz because a lot of people are going to be excited to see what he's going to do outside of the Noah context. But they're putting him into the ring with Shingo. Like Shingo, one of the best pro wrestlers in the world, a guy who's I don't think it's possible to have a rotten match with. You'd have to be an absolute sack of turnips for that to happen. Throw Oiwa in there. He's going to bring the best out of Oiwa, and maybe we'll see some back and forth there where that's also going to help consecrate this guy. Look, in my opinion, this is one of the guys who has all the potential to be one of New Japan's saviors, and I'm saying this, a little, a little cheekily, but also with a little sincerity. Like I'm somewhere between the two. I'm not saying it really seriously, but I'm also saying it seriously. I think Oiwa has nothing but upside. Nothing but upside. So you could do better. How could you do better? Well, you could pull a Kazuchika Okada return, right? You could do a Kazuchika Okada expedition return, right? You could do that, or you could do this. Well, and look, Let's just see what happens. I'm curious. I don't think they're, I don't, I do not think in any way, shape, or form that this is a failed situation, that it's a fumble. A lot of people seem to think it is. I don't know. I'm confident. I think this is a good way I think it's a good way to present him, bring him back, present him, get him back, get his feet wet in New Japan, right? As a guy. And, you know, a lot of people are like, well, is he a good fit in TMDK? Yeah, he is. And I think he's going to come across as the second of the company, especially after he wins a title, especially after he and Zach will probably both hold gold in that company, in that faction. Because we'll get to that in a couple of weeks, but you can absolutely make an argument for Oiwa winning the Never title off of Shingo. You absolutely can make an argument for that. And maybe this is why they want to take it off Henare. No disrespect to Henare, but they probably felt that Shingo could get a better match out of Oiwa than Henare could. And I kind of agree with that. Not every, again, no disrespect to Henare. He's just no Shingo Takagi. But then again, not a lot of people are Shingo Takagi. It's just, that's rarefied air, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, Henare is tremendous, don't get me wrong, but he's no Shingo. So I personally don't have a problem with it. He's gonna shine as the second of TMDK. Who are the others? Fujita, Robbie Eagles, like those are juniors. Haston Nichols, come on now. He's going to naturally rise above this crop of dudes that he's with. He's not going to be just a background player. He's not going to be the Bushi of the group. You know what I mean? He's not going to be he's not going to be the if we're going back like to old versions of Chaos, he's not going to be the Yujiro Takahashi of the group. He's not going to be the Chase Owens of the group. He's going to rise above. He's going to be fine. I think a lot of people are showing a lot of concern, which is good because that shows that they're into the kid, but I don't see any signs of danger. Not at this point. Au contraire, I'm like, pretty interesting, pretty bold stuff. Let's see what happens. We had another singles match early on. Hiroki Goto defeated Gabe Kidd. I thought, not unlike the guys of the flagship talked about, I thought that they were going to give Gabe Kidd a win here, because the last time that Gabe Kidd fought Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi was in a tag team match. It was the tag team match where Jake Lee got hurt and they went to a finish, and Goto was upset because Gabe Kidd didn't kick out. Like, it was clearly not the finish, right? They went to finish. It was clearly not the finish. Goto was surprised, and it sort of let you believe that maybe Goto wasn't supposed to go over here. And Gabe Kidd made a call. He called an audible, and he just let himself be beat because his partner had just been taken out. So I thought, since Gabe Kidd is a pushed commodity in New Japan, I thought that they were going to give him his win back here. That they were going to give him the win that he was supposed to get, but apparently not. But then again, it also explains what happened later on in the evening, because Goto came in to challenge for the global title. Well, if he had lost, then that wouldn't have made sense for him to then head on out, because, there's no standings, there's no rankings in New Japan either, right? But they usually do this pattern where a guy will win a match early on in the evening and then show up later for a challenge. They're not going to have a guy who has been on a losing streak come in and be like, hey, I'm going to challenge for this championship. That just doesn't work, But then again, they'll have a guy come off of excursion and challenge for a major title in the company against one of the promotion's big stars. So what do I know, right? What the fuck do I know? Anyway, this was a good little match, 3.25 star. I think people were expecting more out of it, but I mean, look, this was like 1, 2, 3. This was the third match from the top. Third match from the top, because it's counted as 2 matches, right? third match from the top, they're not going to tell Hiroki Goto and Gabe Kidd, third match from the top, go out there and have a 15-minute match. No, this was actually under 10 minutes. Well, the proper one, right? The no DQ. And that annoyed me. I'll tell you what annoyed me. Gabe Kidd, at first, Gabe Kidd coming out during Goto's entrance and then getting the cameras to follow him backstage to see that he had beat him up. I was like, yeah, this is very North American of you. This is kind of corny. But okay, I'll let it pass. But then both guys get counted out, and then Gabe Kidd grabs the microphone and says, we're going to restart the match and do it at DQ, and then they ring the bell and no DQ, and then they ring the bell and the match starts. And I'm sitting there going, when did Gabe Kidd get booking powers? What is this? And then I'm like, wait, this feels so much like North American booking right now, particularly WWE. I don't need this. I'm convinced this is all Gabe's creative, right? It has to be. Because you never see this shit from the Japanese wrestlers. They just come in and fight. It has to be these North American sensibilities. They're like, ooh. Gabe doesn't need this either. He doesn't need this fucking bullshit with, let's restart the match with, who cares? And it weighs everything down. I gave this match 3.25 stars though. I thought it was fun. I thought it was really good. And then Yota Tsuji, Hiromu Takahashi, and Bushi defeated Jeff Cobb, Callan Newman, and Francesco Akira. The big story coming out of this, two of them, is that Yota Tsuji and Jeff Cobb are still at odds with each other. Later on, later on during the post-match press conferences, that they do, the presser that they do. Tsuji and Cobb were jaw-jacking at each other, and then Ren Narita ran in and took them out with his stupid push-up bar or whatever, pull-up bar, whatever it is. And so, we're back to where we were with these three guys just before Narita got injured, because this is exactly the angle that finished the count-out draw that happened between Cobb and Tsuji for the World TV title. They went to the draw, and then after the match, they're jaw-jacking, and then Ren Narita runs in. So they did the exact same thing now that Narita's no longer hurt. So I'm fearing that they're going to do a three-way match for the World TV title, probably at King of Pro Wrestling again, and maybe as a way to protect Jeff Cobb and have Narita take the pin. But you could also make an argument that Ren Narita could take the pin, could win the match. And there's nothing that I would be less excited about than 15-minute sprints, 15-minute World TV title matches with Ren Narita as champion. You cannot get me less excited. Anyway, we'll see. So that was story number one coming out of that match. And story number two was Hiromu Takahashi going real hard on Francesco Akira's recently injured or back from injuries. What am I trying to say? Francesco Akira's knee, which had taken him out of the Best of Super Juniors tournament. Now he's rehabbed, he's back, and Hiromu was going real hard on it. Very edgy, and they noted it at the end, it's like, oh, what a cold, icy glare from Hiromu Takahashi looking over, because he won the match by just beating the shit out of Akira's knee. Yeah, that's the big stuff. So we got a lot of stuff set up. Oh, then the first match was Dragon Daya, Risuke Taguchi, and Shota Umino, who is still in the doghouse, if you ask me. Defeated Tiger Mask, Tomoaki Hanma, and Yuji Nagata. Not much to report there. So there's a lot of busy show, lots of surprises, lots of things happening, lots of matches being set up, right? So if we think over King of Pro Wrestling coming up on October 14 again, as we said, we know for sure Tetsuya Naito versus Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. That's set in stone. Shingo Takagi versus Ryohei Oiwa for the Never Openweight Championship. That is also set in stone. Then we can make some assumptions. Then we can assume some things. David Finlay versus Hiroki Goto for the global title. Dookie defending the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title against Sho. And probably, maybe they'll do something like a special singles match with Hiromu versus Francesco Akira. Am I forgetting something? I don't think so. Anyway, if I am forgetting something, we'll find out in a few a few upcoming weeks, days, because it's not that far away. Like I said, like October 14, folks. October is upon us. It's in 2 weeks. That's all there is to it. So, already shaping up to be a really good card. I'm excited about it. But as far as this one goes, Destruction in Kobe 2024, I recommend it. Look, I think the business end of this card is all really good. If there's really only one match you can watch, and that would be a shame, I'd say Shingo versus Hinare. But try to squeeze in the business end of this card. I think it was really good. If you can and watch the whole show, go right ahead. I don't think you'll be bored. I think you'll be entertained by the matches. I think they all delivered in their own little ways. But this was a very good show, and full of surprises, full of stuff happening. That's what you want out of your pro wrestling. Don't make it boring. Don't make it boring. Make it interesting. Have some good matches. The formula is so simple when you think about it. There you go. Highly recommended from me, New Japan Pro Wrestling's Destruction in Kobe 2024.